change that. Okay, so starting over. So, taking a look at the NFC first, we've got the Green Bay Packers who have clinched their division. Therefore, they are locked into the playoff spot. They are 10-3 in the NFC North, first place. They hold the tiebreaker because of the head-to-head where they beat New Orleans. So that's why you're seeing the 10-3 records with Green Bay sitting at the number one spot. Green Bay has Carolina, Tennessee, and Chicago left on the schedule. So easily they could end up going 13-3, and if they go 13-3, they've got first place locked. Moving down to the Saints, there we got Saints in second place. They have also clinched, but they've clinched just the playoff spot. They have not officially clinched the division yet. They're sitting at 10-3 as well in the NFC South. Saints can win the division this weekend against the Chiefs because they own the head-to-head wins over Tampa Bay. So as long as the Saints win this week, they will clinch the division. If they lose, Tampa Bay still has an opportunity to pass them if the Saints continue to lose. So again, your head-to-head is owned by the wins over Tampa Bay because the Saints swept Tampa Bay. Saints have Kansas City this weekend with Minnesota and Carolina to round out the season. And we all know how Minnesota has played the Saints towards the end of the season and in the playoffs the last few years. So it's more than possible that the Saints could still drop too, especially with Kansas City. Kansas City is one of the most complete teams in the NFL right now. There's a good chance that Saints could get bumped out. Sitting at number 3, we've got the LA Rams, 9-4 in the NFC West, sitting in first place ahead of the Seahawks currently. Rams need to win to keep pace with the Seahawks. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win this week over the Jets, and then they follow it up next week against the Hawks, and then closing out the season in Week 17 against the Cardinals. So the Rams, in order to stay ahead, must continue to win because the Seahawks are literally right on their heels, tied with them. If the Rams lose a game and the Hawks win a game, they're out. Excuse me, they're out as in they're out of the NFC West lead. Excuse me. Sitting at number 4, we've got the WFT, the Washington Football Team, sitting at 6-7, leaders in the NFC East. Washington leads the NFC East by 1 game, and they need to stay ahead of the Giants because the Giants hold the tiebreaker over Washington with a sweep of Washington on the season. Washington plays Seattle, Carolina, and Philly. Kind of a tough schedule coming up, especially with Seattle coming in this week. And then Philly with a resurgence coming under Jalen Hurts. So Washington may struggle to hang on to their lead. Outside of the top 4, we've got the Seahawks holding the number 5 spot, sitting at 9-4 in the NFC West, second place. Week 16 matchup against the Rams could define the West. They have Washington, the Rams, and then the 49ers. And the Seattle Seahawks can also clinch a playoff spot with a win this week over Washington. They may not get the division, but they will at least clinch a playoff spot. Sitting at number 6, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs need massive help if they expect to win the division. They're sitting at 8-5, and they're second in the NFC South. They need New Orleans to finish 0-3 to really have a shot. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win plus a Chicago loss. So if the Bucs get a win this week and Chicago loses, the Bucs will clinch a playoff spot. There's a lot of clinching scenarios in the NFC this week. The Bucs play Atlanta this week, followed by Detroit, and then close out the season again with Atlanta. So they play Atlanta twice in the last 3 weeks, closing out the season. And the Bucs hold the head-to-head win over Minnesota, which is why you see Minnesota sitting behind them if they were tied. Cardinals sitting at the number 7 hole, the final spot in the NFC playoff race. Cardinals are 7-6 in the NFC West, third spot. Cardinals alive? Barely. They can only win the division with the Rams losing to the Jets and then beating the Seahawks and then losing to the Cardinals. Plus, Seattle has to lose to the Rams and San Francisco. Doesn't matter if they beat Philly this week. So That's the only way the Cardinals can win the division, is that exact scenario. The Rams need to lose to the Jets, beat the Seahawks, and then lose the head-to-head against the Cardinals, plus Seattle losing to the Rams and losing to San Francisco. Wow. Cardinals play this weekend. They play Philly, and then they've got San Francisco week 16, and then the Rams in week 17, rounding out the season. What a scenario. You actually have to root for the Hawks to lose to the team that you need to beat the following week. What a crazy situation. Crazy. Sorry about that. I lost my screen. All right, the top of the hunt in the NFC. The Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are 6-7 in the NFC North. They're the number 2 spot. They're on the outside, but could sneak in with an Arizona loss. Minnesota's got a very tough road. They need a lot of luck going forward. They need multiple losses by Arizona or Tampa Bay. Remaining schedule is Chicago, New Orleans, and Detroit. So 3 winnable games for the Vikings, absolutely, no doubt, especially with their luck against New Orleans of recent years. So they could win out, but they still need the help from Arizona losing in order for them to sneak in. The Chicago Bears are just on the outside as well, sitting at 6-7, and they're number 3 in the NFC North. The Bears have a little less rocky road, but still need a lot of luck. Their schedule remaining is Minnesota, Jacksonville, and Green Bay. Now here's the kicker for the Bears. They hold the head-to-head over the Bucs. So if it boils down to it, the Bears beat the Bucs earlier this year, and if they end up in a tie, the Bears hold the tiebreaker, and the Bucs are out of the playoffs. The Bears need to win at least 2 out of the 3 games for a shot, and hope for the Bucs and Cards to each lose 2 to really make this run doable. When you have the Bucs sitting at 8-5, the Bears have to hope for the 2 losses to get to the head-to-head, but like I said, they need to sweep. Then you got the 2 NFC Easters, and the only reason they're still listed in here is because of the NFC East is so bad. In reality, the Giants are 1 game out. They're sitting at 5-8, number 2 in the NFC East. They do hold the head-to-head over Washington, so if Washington does slip up and the Giants pull off a win, then Giants get the win. Giants get the tiebreaker. The remaining schedule for the Giants is Cleveland, Baltimore, and Dallas, so it's not an easy task for them to get a win even this first week, even if Washington does happen to lose to Seattle. So that head-to-head is very, very important. And if, like I said, if Washington loses, the Giants have an opening, but the Giants have a very tough schedule. Eagles are sitting at 4-8-1, and they're number 3 in the NFC East right now. But that 1 tie they've got could turn out to be the lifesaver for them. Imagine the tie against the Bengals earlier this season could be what gets them into the playoffs. How stupid is that at 4-8-1, and they could still win the division? The Eagles, 2 wins can put them in the driver's seat. They play Arizona, Dallas, and Washington. All 3 winnable games. They need Washington to lose to either Seattle or Carolina, and the Giants to lose to Dallas. As long as Philly handles their business going forward, that's all that they need to happen. Washington could very easily lose to Seattle this weekend. Then they could very easily lose to Carolina in the next week. They could lose to either one of them, and Philly can pass them as long as Philly can beat Washington in week 17. And then Giants just have to lose to Dallas. And the main reason for that is for the They just need to lose one of them. Before we get into the AFC, a few other teams that are still mathematically in the hunt, but let's face it, at 5 and 8 outside of the NFC East, aren't getting wild card spots. So we're not even going to get into it. The top of the AFC, or let's say where 11 wins might not get you into the show. Sitting at number 1, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who just clinched the division this last weekend. Sitting at 12-1, number 1 overall, and number 1 in the AFC West. Chiefs hold the lead with a remaining schedule of New Orleans, Atlanta, and the LA Chargers, which the LA Chargers almost beat them earlier this season. But it's hard to imagine that they lose any of these next 3. New Orleans, I think, is going to give them their biggest test. Outside of that, I don't see anything happening. LA could come in and try to play spoiler, but I don't see it happening, especially if the Steelers do go on to win the next 2 games. Kansas City would need to win against the Chargers in order to maintain the number 1 overall seed, because Pittsburgh's their first loss was to Washington outside of the conference, and the Chiefs have already lost one of their divisional games. So if the Chiefs end up losing to the Chargers to end the season because they rest players, and Pittsburgh wins the next 3 games, Pittsburgh could end up back in the 1 seed. Which takes me into the Steelers sitting at the number 2 seed. They have clinched a playoff spot, sitting at 11-2 in the AFC North. Steelers are not a lock for the number 2 seed yet. Losing one more means that they could be the number 3 seed. They could turn out to be the number 4 seed even. They play Cincy this weekend. Indy following that, Cleveland to wrap up the season. The Steelers can clinch the AFC North with a win this weekend against Cincy on Monday Night Football. So they could clinch the division because Cleveland lost to Baltimore on Monday night. Now again, the Steelers could turn around and still get the number 1 spot if the Chiefs decide to rest their starters in Week 17, provided Pittsburgh wins against Cincy and Indy. But then the Steelers still have to beat Cleveland to end the season, and Cleveland's going to be fighting for their playoff lives. At the number 3 spot, we got the Bills. 10-3 in the AFC East, first place in the AFC East. And the Bills might actually be the second best team in the AFC with how the Steelers have played over the last month. Bills played Denver, New England, and Miami to round out the season and have a very winnable schedule. They can clinch the division this weekend with a win and a Miami loss. So in order for them to clinch the division this week, they have to, number 1, take care of business against Denver, but then Miami's got to lose. So it's possible that we have another division champion this weekend. Sitting at number 4, Tennessee Titans, 9-4, sitting in first place in the AFC South. Titans are hanging on by a thread, though. Only the tiebreaker over the Colts is the division record of 4-1 versus 2-2. Tennessee is 4-1 in the division. Colts are 2-2. They split the season meetings at a game apiece. One slip-up could put the Colts back atop the AFC South. Remaining schedule for Titans: Detroit, Green Bay, and Houston. As long as New Orleans is sitting within one game of Green Bay will not be resting starters. So expect a fully functional Week 16 matchup against Green Bay. That could end up putting the Colts back right into the thick of the top of the AFC. Moving out of the top 4 into the wild card spots, we've got the Browns holding the number 1 wild card spot. Yes, I said that right. The Browns are holding the number 1 wild card spot. The Browns are 9-4. The Browns are number 2 in the AFC North. The Cleveland Browns are the number 5 ranked team in the AFC. The Browns. The Browns appear playoff bound, but unlikely to catch the Steelers for the division champ, and that's because of the schedule coming up as New York Giants, New York Jets, and Pittsburgh. And the only reason why I don't think that they're going to win it is because I believe Pittsburgh's going to handle their business this weekend against Cincinnati. They've got a pair of winnable games against the New York teams, but Week 17 could be interesting if Pittsburgh does continue their struggles as of late against a bad Cincinnati team. If Pittsburgh loses this game, I expect the Browns to capitalize, and I expect the Browns to win the division. And at that point, if the Steelers lose to the Cincinnati Bengals, I don't believe they deserve to win the division if they fall to 11-3 and drop 3 straight games after starting 11-0. Moving on, we've got the Indianapolis Colts sitting in the number 6 seed at 9-4 and number 2 in the AFC South. Colts are literally staring at a potential division championship if they can win out or if Tennessee can slip up. The tie goes to Tennessee currently, with Houston, Pittsburgh, and Jacksonville left on the schedule. All it takes is one slip up by Tennessee, and when Tennessee's got to play Green Bay, it's more than possible. But the Colts have to play against Pittsburgh yet too. The Week 16 matchups for several AFC teams are going to be massive. Between the Titans playing Green Bay and the Colts playing Pittsburgh, there's a lot riding on those games. Then we move on to the number 7 team, Miami, sitting at 8-5. 8-5 for the Dolphins, number 2 in the AFC East. Dolphins are 3 wins away from their first playoff appearance since 2016, and what could be their best record since 2008 when they went 11-5. Their remaining schedule, a very winnable New England game, a very winnable Las Vegas game, and then an equally winnable Buffalo game. Because, depending on how Buffalo finishes out the rest of the next 2 games, Buffalo may rest starters in Week 17. Miami's going to be playing for their playoff lives in Week 17. So what does that mean? That means that Miami could absolutely take down Buffalo. And that's going to make or break their playoff hopes. Excuse me. All right, top of the hunt in the AFC. Starting off, we've got the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens' big win against Cleveland kept them in this hunt. If they lost that game, this would be a different conversation, and they would definitely be on the outside looking in. It's going to take a little bit of luck and some key losses for the Ravens, but it is doable. The door isn't shut in the AFC North's number 2 spot, since Baltimore does hold the head-to-heads against Cleveland. Baltimore is only 1 game behind Cleveland, just so you know. They're sitting at 8-5. The Browns are 9-4. Baltimore's remaining schedule is Jacksonville, the New York Giants, and Cincinnati. Jacksonville, the Giants, and Cincinnati. Tell me that's not 3 winnable games for Baltimore, especially if Baltimore plays like they did last night, okay? So Baltimore's got head-to-head wins versus Cleveland and Indy. So if Indy doesn't win the division, they could get bumped. If Cleveland doesn't win the division, they could get bumped. All it's going to take is 1 loss by Cleveland or 1 loss by Indy, and Baltimore's got them. Provided Baltimore can sweep. And then really the last spot that anybody gives a crap about in the AFC playoff hunt is the Raiders. Now the Raiders sitting at 7-6, number 2 in the AFC West, and they need a lot of damn luck. There is no joke about that. They've got the Chargers, Miami, and Denver. 3 winnable games. 3 absolutely winnable games. It's no cakewalk for them, but they could take down Miami and then hold the head-to-head over Miami and take the number 7 seed. But they also hold the head-to-head win over Cleveland. The Raiders are also 3-1 in the division, which would put not only in the head-to-head, that would put them as the better division record over the Raiders or over the Browns as well. So you could see the Raiders, if the Browns fall twice in their remaining schedule, which I don't think that's going to happen unless the Giants pull off a shocker, but the Browns could get bumped by the Raiders even if the Raiders can win out. There's a lot riding on the next several weeks in the AFC. NFC's pretty much locked up in most spots. AFC's got a lot of moving around that can happen. Now, the other 2 teams I will mention that prayers won't even help are the Patriots and the Broncos. Patriots at 6-7, Broncos are 5-8. You might as well shut the book on them. They're done. It would take a miracle at this point for the Patriots to make the playoffs, especially since the Patriots have to play the Dolphins this week. Dolphins could actually, get this, the Dolphins could actually eliminate the playoffs, or eliminate the Patriots from the playoffs this weekend. How about that?